challenge the legendary player Lisa Roll, who you can think of as the Roger Federer of Go. We always used to talk about, well, if we could eventually crack Go and have a program that could be the world champion, then we must have invented some generic, general purpose algorithm. So maybe we're on the cusp of all of them, and we're very excited about it, but it is just a rung on the ladder towards solving artificial intelligence.
Okay, this is actually more interesting than it sounds, because creating a computer program that can do this is remarkable. And what it tells me is that if they can do this, they can do a lot of things. And that means, and they did this faster than they originally had planned. Exponential growth, perhaps, I don't know. It means that we will see software being used in places that we haven't seen before. For example, giving advice to people. So instead of talking to a person, I mean, go to the bank and you're asking about loans, and a computer program will help you, because it has better knowledge than a human person. I don't know. At least there will be impact on jobs. Okay, very interesting things that are happening. Okay, so I want to talk about this becoming invisible. So this is the lecture of the day, and the reason I call it becoming invisible goes back to the slide that I had about products being very technologically focused to begin with, and then sort of the technology wears off and it becomes something you take for granted. Now I'm going to use two examples from Apple, and I'm risking it because I'm using Apple a lot, and I guess it's an overused company for examples in case studies, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's so recent events. And do you know what happened on this day? Anybody? 2010? Steve Jobs, one of his last keynotes, probably his last. This is the iPad. So no, it was 2010. No, prior to this, everybody's been waiting for this. Let me give you the backstory here. Everybody's been waiting for this, at least in the technology community. Nobody else was sort of looking for, nobody knew about this. But there's been news, a lot of news, and it was a lot of discussion among the technology media. And they were thinking, why would I need a device like this? It's why? I have nothing, nobody's gonna buy this stuff. I mean, it's a useless item. Nobody's gonna buy this. So then Steve Jobs goes on stage and
so all of us use laptops and smartphones now. Everybody uses a laptop and or a smartphone. And the question has arisen lately, is there room for a third category of device in the middle? Something that's between a laptop and a smartphone. And of course, we've pondered this question for years as well. The bar is pretty high. In order to really create a new category of devices, those devices are going to have to be far better at doing some key tasks. They're going to have to be far better at doing some really important things. Better than the laptop, better than the smartphone. What kind of tasks? Well, things like browsing the web. That's a pretty tall order. Something that's better at browsing the web than a laptop? Okay. Doing email. Enjoying and sharing photographs. Video, watching videos. Enjoying your music collection. Playing games. Reading ebooks. If there's going to be a third category of device, it's going to have to be better at these kinds of tasks than a laptop or a smartphone. Otherwise, it has no reason for being. Now, some people have thought that's a netbook. The problem is netbooks aren't better at anything. They're slow, they have low quality displays, and they run clunky old PC software. So they're not better than a laptop at anything, they're just cheaper. They're just cheap laptops. And we don't think that they're a third category device. But we think we've got something that is. And we'd like to show it to you today for the first time. And we call it the iPad. So, let me show it to you. This is what it looks like.
Okay. So it was released then April 3rd. So this is 27th January, April 3rd. Now in between, people were saying, you know, nobody's going to buy this stuff. And the press was, you know, pretty negative about this. For example, 5 reasons the iPad will fail. A skeptic's review, anti-hype, why the iPad disappoints. Even Bill Gates was not impressed. We can actually talk about Microsoft actually had a tablet earlier. And Apple's good for nothing iPad. So, and if you listen to the technology press, the podcasts, they were always, you know, nobody needs this, nobody's going to buy it. Who cares about this product? It's a stupid product. And the response?
4, 3, 2, 1. Apple fanatics were in no short supply on Saturday, as several hundred lined up outside of the Fifth Avenue Apple Store in Manhattan, all for the company's latest creation, the iPad. The first customer in line had been waiting to buy one for 4 days, during which he became somewhat of a celebrity.
It's been quite amazing seeing all these tourists come up and wanting to take a picture of you, with you, however way they want.
While he was the first customer in line, he wasn't the first one to buy, as those who had reserved their iPads were the first ones in the store. Many of those in line came from around the world, so they could be one of the first to buy the new Apple product.
We came here since the iPad has been launching until like in a month in Sweden. We thought, yeah, let's take a use for vacation in the States and buy some iPads.
So people saw it. They said, you know, I don't know what this is for, but I want to buy it. And they did. So the technology guys, they said, no, this is no good. Nobody's going to buy this. And when it came out, people bought it. And that's remarkable doing this. So this is, you know, remember you do it for the why. This is a perfect example of this. Now, and this is what they sold. So these are the sale for the first day of availability. And here you see, since then, this has leveled off. So they're slowing down. Now, the important point here is not about these crazy people that wait outside for 4 days just to get something you can get the week after, you know, by walking into the store. And I even saw a person with this thing, you know, day after this here in the university. But there's one point that I want to make here is the change of computers. So this is a computer, and suddenly the computer has totally changed. And that was the transformation that I wanted to make a point about. So there's an inflection point. We have computers that are technology, and then we have computers that is not technology anymore. It's consumer device. So that's the shift. And I don't know if you know what the C drive is. It's sort of getting forgotten, especially people using Macs. But in the old days, you had A drive, and C drive was the hard disk. And you were very much aware that the computer had a disk, because you were saving to a disk. So you save your file. It's a desktop metaphor. You have a file and you save it. File used to be something, a paper. That's where the word comes from. So that's gone. And I remember when I was looking at I saw a tablet, the first really decent tablet from Microsoft, Surface, I think it was called. it came out, and I was looking at this. A salesman was showing this to me, and I was really impressed. And then he said, you know, the best of all, you can actually go to the C drive, see the disk drive here. And now you blew it. Man, you don't want to do that because technology who cares about disks? The technology is gone. You're just working on a document. You don't save it. It's just there. You don't have to. So the notion of a disk was sort of shifting away. The computer you can use standing. A computer you can take to the toilet. So the computer sort of disappeared. And that was the point that I wanted to make. And that is the important thing about the iPad. And there's a whole generation of people growing up with this thing. And they look at the world differently. Like this one. This is one of the viral videos that have been going around. Yeah, she goes and tests the finger. There. Yeah, the finger does work. So you can actually give a small child this with a game to play, and they will know how to use it. And that was not possible 20 years ago. So then, yeah, let's talk about the Microsoft one. Microsoft actually released a tablet in 2002. Now, it was not successful. A few people actually started to use this, but it didn't take off. Can you guess why?
It was just Windows XP.
Yes.
Smaller form factor.
Yes, it was a Windows. So what they did, they put Windows XP, the operating system at the time that people used when they were sitting down with their computer, desktop computer, they crammed it into this small device. Okay. And then it felt like a broken computer because you couldn't do things very easily. And you had a stylus, and the difference with the iPad was that they completely changed the user interface. But in the Microsoft version, you could still go and see the file manager, the C drive, and all of these things. So it was more like a desktop computer with no keyboard, and that frustrated people because they saw the desktop as it was, but the keyboard was gone. So they saw the same thing on the desktop computer as they saw on the tablet. The keyboard was gone, no mouse, and it felt like a crippled system. So they didn't take off at that time. So the shift in focus is like this. You have technology, and then it turns to a consumer product. The computer becomes tablet, and it's totally different. But then it's also other things. It's something that is very obvious, and then it's invisible. It becomes something that, for example, the internet, the hard drive. You're aware of these things, and then they just go away, become invisible. That's why I'm talking about invisible. And it's analytical thinking. I have to learn how to use the computer, but the iPad, you don't have to learn about that. So it becomes from thinking into other parts of the brain. The analytical thinking to the emotional and feeling. So you're buying products for their looks, colors, and their ecosystems. And this is user-centered design. Okay, I think you just take break early. And I think this video is a little bit longer than 5 minutes. But This is done normal. I'm talking about usage and design. So let's take a break early and then continue with this video after when we come back. Of course. Oh, I was talking about the reference citation. So you can see the video. So it's about how to cite, use references, find resources, and everything's on the tape. So you can look at that tonight. kemur alltaf seinna um kvöldið. Svo föstudagurinn þeir eru oft þannig hjá mér að ég þarf að fara eitthvað, það er eitthvað partí eða eitthvað, svo ég bara heim eftir kvöldið og við ekki setja þetta inn. En það er mjög spennt að setja vídeó inn á kvöldið. Því að networkið bara alveg steik. Svo kannski kláraðu það nóttina þegar allir hættir á Netflix. Það bara versta tíma. Þetta alltaf aðeins á eftir. En svona reyna að gera innan dagsins. Það bara sem fyrst. Þannig að þetta komið. Þetta frá Vimeo, svo getur líka að fara á Vimeo. Oft að vanta líkan hérna. Það komið á Vimeo. Á Vimeo og finnum username. Okay.
Each day, we interact with thousands of objects. Objects as simple as a toothbrush or a coffee cup, as complicated as a computer or an automobile. But not all of these items are designed to be easy to use. For example, how many of us have trouble programming our VCRs or accidentally locked the keys in the car? Don Norman has made a career of studying and improving the design of everyday things. As a boy, Don Norman wanted to know what makes things work. From his toys to the family radio, he tried to take them apart and figure them out. So it was not surprising that he got a master's degree in electrical engineering at the University of Pennsylvania. But he was also interested in how the human mind works. He went on to study cognitive science, earning a PhD in mathematical psychology from Penn, and going on to teach at the University of California at San Diego. Engineering and psychology may seem like two completely different fields, but when Norman was sent as part of a task force to study the 3 Mile Island nuclear accident in 1979, all of his passions converged in one eureka moment that defined the rest of his career.
If you were to design a control room to make errors, to cause errors, you couldn't have done a better job. That was the magic moment. What that did was bring back all of my engineering background to psychology and say, hey, we now know a lot about psychology and we know a lot about engineering. You've got to take the two and put them together.
Norman began to work on the design of high-tech objects like computers and aviation technology. But while on a sabbatical in Cambridge, England, he found that design problems were everywhere in the world around him.
I discovered I couldn't run the water faucets, water taps, or the light switches, or the stove. I couldn't even open doors. I couldn't figure out whether I should push or pull. I asked myself one major question. I said, I walk around the world, encounter new objects all of the time. How do I know how to use them?
Norman's observations led him to write a book that has become a classic, The Design of Everyday Things.
So I tried to understand this communication process between the object and the person. What were the signals that let me understand it?
Norman asked, how do people relate to the objects that they encounter every day? He found that many objects that were difficult to use could be improved by teaching designers a set of simple but powerful principles that force them to think about how their products would be used, who would be using them, and why.
What I tell designers and engineers is that they need to understand the context in which the tool, device they are using is to be employed. A problem with many designers and engineers is that they're too logical. And logic is wonderful, but it doesn't describe real behavior. And when we're designing technology, we have to design for real people.
Norman observed that emotions played a crucial role in good design. Even if we understand an object on a cognitive or intellectual level, we might still hate using it, which makes that design a failure.
So emotional design is a critical part of design. Things that we come to love, things that we come to hate. Cognition is trying to understand and interpret the world. Emotion is an information processing system from the head that is evaluating the world, determining what's good or bad, safe or dangerous. And it takes precedence over cognition most of the time.
He believes that even if you need to be taught how to use it the first time, if the object is designed well, you will never need to relearn how to use it.
And one of the things I teach about design is, it's okay if you can't use it the first time. It's okay if you have to read a book or someone has to instruct you. But it's not okay if you have to do the same thing a second time. Good design is when someone shows it to you, you say, oh, I see. Bad design is where you still don't understand it.
Norman's design concepts have been applied to just about every kind of technology imaginable, and he constantly sees opportunities to improve the way we live and interact with technology everywhere he looks in the world around him.
I spend a lot of time just walking around, watching, trying to observe people in natural settings, trying to see how they behave, what problems they encounter today, what things go well. Many scientists have laboratories. They go off and do experiments. To me, my laboratory is the real world.
A few years ago, I went down and bought a radio, one of these FM radios, to have in the kitchen if you want to listen to the news in the morning, which I don't do very often though. But I bought this radio. It has 7 buttons on it, knobs, and 3 on one side and then 3 on the other side, and then in the middle there's a turning knob, huge. And I bought it because it has internet connections. I can listen to internet radio. Cool, I'm gonna buy it. I'll figure out how this works. No, I will not. This is the worst investment that I ever did. And I barely made it to figuring out how to get few radio stations inside this. And they always pop out every now and then. And I have to reprogram them. And if I reprogram them, they go and scan everything and find nothing. And then I can manually add radio stations. So this is the worst piece of junk radio that I bought. And the user experience is horrible. I should have taken a picture of this bad design, and you know it when you see it. But I try not to mess with it if I want to listen to it. So psychology and engineering, put those together and figure out how to make stuff work better. And we're seeing more and more products that are thinking along these lines, and they're putting industrial design into products. But computers are still pretty complicated technology. There's a lot of friction, a lot of devices, they don't work together. And getting them to talk to each other is difficult. But it's getting a little bit better and better all the time. It's becoming consumer devices, and it's sort of disappearing for a lot of things. But then we always get new complicated things to add on to this. And but what I'm really interested in when I'm following technology trends are those inflection points. You see, tablet growth, it went out over the PC and the notebook PCs. So that's what I call inflection point. Something is turning, something is changing. And when something changes, you can see there's a shift in societies. Inflection points, that's the thing. When things turn, stop going this way and go the other way. It's not technology anymore, it's a consumer device. And let me give you a few examples of this. TV business is starting to collapse. This was 2012, and it did. Now, you know, Netflix is more popular than ever. So Netflix is taking everything, and we knew it in 2012 that something was going to happen. And the viewing of programming, linear programming, has dropped dramatically. And also radio is just dropping like crazy. And the average age of people listening to the radio stations here in Iceland, they're getting old. They're getting pretty old. And also, primetime rating brings speculation of shift in habits. You know, some of these shows in the US are actually really, really popular when they aired the first time. And a lot of people watch them still. So, for example, the case like there was a program called Glee, I think. Now, when it is aired the first time, a lot of people are viewing it together. And then the Twitter stream starts to flow. So people watch the show with a device and follow the tweets. So you're watching it with other people. And you can see that on the Icelandic radio if you watch the show that is on Sunday night, where the weather is always bad. Have you seen that? It's very popular, and there's a Twitter stream going on. And for events like the Eurovision Song Contest, having the Twitter stream. So this is changing viewing habit, and that means that you have to watch it live. So live TV is really strong, but everything else in TV has changed. Phone customers ditch their carriers faster than ever. Why do you need a landline phone?
What carrier?
Carrier is like Siemens, like telephone company. 365 Siemens, that's a carrier. And text messaging on the client, I don't think it is. It just moved. It moved to Messenger and other applications. So these are inflection points that are changing. And this has a huge impact on the phone companies, because once they made all the revenue, most of the revenue from text, SMS, and that is dropping. And there's trying to find new sources of income. So these are inflection points when the growth starts and when it declines. And this is what we look for when we're trying to track technology changes. Okay, hype curve. There's a really interesting, really useful tool that we can use, and that is called the hype curve. And this is something that I follow very much. I want to know, if I see technology, I want to know where on the hype curve this is. Now, what this means, this is like the stock market. Everybody's buying these stocks here, and then everything crashes. And if it crashes, will it come up again? It usually does. So there's a natural sort of curve. And I have, I think I have the video next. This used to be the editor of Wired magazine, Chris Anderson. He quit that and went on to form a do-it-yourself grown company. But a few years ago, he was explaining the hype curve because he was in the magazine business of a technology magazine, and they had to know what technologies are coming, so they had to be in forecasting.
I'd like to speak about technology trends, which is something that many of you follow, but we also follow for related reasons. Obviously, being a technology magazine, technology trends are something that we write about and need to know about. But also, as part of being any monthly magazine, you live in the future. We have a long lead time. We have to plan issues many months in advance. We have to guess at what public appetites are going to be 6 months, 9 months down the road. So we're in the forecasting business. We also, like a lot of companies, create a product that's based on technology trends. In this case, ours is about ideas and information, and if we're lucky, some entertainment. But the concept's quite the same. And so we have to understand not only why tech is important, where it's going, but also, very importantly, when. The timing is everything. And it's interesting, when you look at the predictions made during the peak of the boom in the 1990s about e-commerce or internet traffic or broadband adoption or internet advertising, they were all right. They were just wrong in time. Almost every one of those has come true just a few years later. But the difference of a few years on stock market valuations is obviously extreme. And that's why timing is everything. You've probably seen something like this before. This is the classic Gartner hype curve, which talks about kind of the trajectory of a technology's lifespan. And just for fun, we put a bunch of technologies on it to show whether they were kind of rising for the first hype peak, or whether they were about to crash into the trough of disillusionment, or rise back in the slope of enlightenment, or etc. And this is one way to do technology forecasting. Get a sense of where technology is, and then anticipate the next upturn. We tend to do any technology that we think is sufficiently important. We'll typically do it twice. Once, we want to do it first. We want to be the first to do it for the geeks who appreciate that. We'll catch it right there at the technology trigger. You can see in 1997, we put Linux on the cover. But then, it comes back, and sufficiently big technologies are going to hit the mainstream. They're going to burst out. And then it's time to do it again. Last year. And that's one way that we try to time technology trends.
So this is actually really useful. So you have this technology trigger where things are starting. You have the peak of inflated expectations, and then it goes down. And if it's worthy, it goes into the through of disillusionment. And if it's worthy, it will go up the slope, and then it will plateau. Let me give you examples here. You see, technology like, do you remember? Probably not. There was a technology around 2000 called WAP, W-A-P. Some know this. It was. I mean, there was an open in the newspaper, full page ad, 2 pages. An opening of WAP. Back then, everybody was talking. There were conferences on this, and people were calling. I was running the company, my first company, where we were building web pages, and I got phone calls. We need a WAP solution. Everybody wanted a WAP solution, and it went up the peak, and then it went down again, because people realized, hey, this doesn't work. This is horrible. The experience is horrible. We have like 100 handsets and different servers, and this time that. It's horrible experience. It didn't work. So it went down, never to be seen again. You have a question?
What's what?
I was explaining. It's a wireless protocol.
Oh.
It's for the mobile. Wireless. It was a wireless protocol. It was the biggest thing in mobile at that time. I should have mentioned that.
Replaced by the internet.
It was replaced by the internet, definitely. But it was the mobiles. Just before 2000, the mobile phone industry, everybody was talking about mobile, and they were sort of mobile internet kind of thing. But WAP was a bad replication of the internet, and you can't do that. So that's an example of technology that went through the peak, and then it went down and never to be seen again. Let me give you another example of technology that went through this, and that is XML. You know XML? It's a markup language for data. So it's a markup language for data. And everybody was talking about it. And I even saw one article that says, is XML going to replace Windows? And everybody was talking about XML. This is going to save the computer industry. Everybody's going to use this. And it went up here and it went down, but it kind of recovered and we still use it. But now we know what it does. It's not going to be the best thing in the world. It is going to be good at what it does. It is bloated. It is slow to process, but it works in a pretty good way. So it went up the slope and now it's just sitting there on the plateau. And now I'm going to ask you, if you were looking at self-driving cars, where would you place them? Where would self-driving cars be?
Getting towards the peak.
Okay.
I'm kind of hoping it's at the slope. Because
Okay, coming here, in the slope.
yeah,
Okay. We'll see. What about 3D printing?
that's peaking.
Peaking.
What about 3D printing, industrial 3D printing?
Actually,
That's probably somewhere, you know. Industrial 3D printing is actually fairly established. Wearables, you know, wearables, things you wear.
it actually might be sloping or approaching plateau.
Okay.
But I think we still need something like a killer app or something to.
It's coming. Watches are wearables. And then people talk about nearables, things you have near you, but not on you, but near you. For example, speech recognition. Where's that?
Disillusionment.
You think it's down here?
Yes.
Okay. Let me, big data. Big data is a good one. Big data, you know, it's probably.
It's definitely past the peak, because I remember like.
It went to the peak. It went really went to the
It
peak.
was all everybody talked about.
Yeah. Nobody knew what it was. Okay, this is from 14. I should have got a new one. You know, this is 2 years old or 1.5 years old. Autonomous vehicle, right on. You can see them, they're on the top. And big data, 3D bioprinting systems, but enterprise 3D printing is over there. Speech recognition is getting done, you know. Speech recognition is getting so really great with all these Siri and Google Voice. Augmented reality, gamification, big data is dropping here. People are realizing, okay, now we're getting it. It can't do this and it cannot do that. So this is a really interesting thing. And here are on the peak, going up the peak, they're really interesting technologies. And if you need still the idea for a topic for a research, you can look at these things here. Consumer 3D printing is sort of dropping from the peak, becoming, you know, yeah, it works. Yeah, I can print stuff with this. And wearable user interfaces is here. Internet of Things, that is 2014 on the peak. But what I have found this to be really useful in finding out where is the maturity of the product. And they do sort of analysis of this now. Really interesting thing. Now I'm going to tell you about the internet bubble, remember? Mm-hmm. In leading up to the years 2000. So the web has started, the world got pack.com and all these great websites. Really, things are happening. Everybody's talking about the internet. New startups coming, you know, multiple a day. And it sort of builds up there until in 2000 it hits the peak. And then everything crashes. So does this look familiar? The internet bubble actually looks like the hype curve. So we see this in people's expectations, and we see this even in the stock market. But there's also a very interesting observation that we can do. First, if you think about it, why did this not have anything? Why did this crash? Think about that. So this is the bubble here. 1995, these are billion people online, not very many. And so you go from, in 5 years, you go from tiny little segment of the population to this huge segment. But since then, so this is the bubble, 95 to 2000, and this is 2014. Now, then the question is, are we in a bubble? The problem in 2000 is that there were no users online. There were so few. They couldn't support these companies, but they're online now. And they're using these services. So this is the sort of exponential growth. People went too far ahead back then. But you know, any idea seems to be work at the time. Here's one description of it. Need money for food, and then he got this idea. You know, anybody that had a business plan or an idea of a business plan could raise money at this time. But talking about bubbles, when we experienced the internet bubble, it was sort of like, you know, wow, what's happening here? What's going on? And people were wondering, you know, why didn't we see this? Well, actually, bubbles are very frequent. And here's one, the railway bubble. Now, the railway was once a new technology, and everybody wanted to go into the rail business. And the value of the stock, it just grew from 26 to 40, 46 in 20 years. Things happened slower in these times. Many companies, overinvestment, and everything crumbled down. Same thing, same pattern. It happens again and again and again. And the hype curve goes a long way to explain these things. So I want to show you more examples of inflection points, because that's sort of the thing that we're looking for here. And Anderson, who we saw earlier, he had his theory of technology. This is one of the things that he looks at, and he has this theory on how this stuff. This is actually really interesting.
I'd like to talk about a way of thinking about technology trends that I call my grand unified theory of predicting the future, but it's closer to a petite unified theory of predicting the future. It's based on the presumption, the observation even, that all important technologies go through 4 stages in their life, at least one of the 4 stages, sometimes all 4 of the stages. And at each one of these stages can be seen as a collision with something else, for example, a critical price line, that changes both the technology and also changes its effect on the world. It's an inflection point. And these are the inflection points that tell you what the next chapter in the technology's life is going to be, and maybe how you can do something about it. The first is the critical price. The first stage in a technology's advance is that it will fall below a critical price. After it falls below a critical price, it will tend, if it's successful, to rise above a critical mass, penetration. Many technologies at that point displace another technology. And that's another important point. And then finally, a lot of technologies commoditize. Towards the end of their life, they become nearly free. Each one of those is an opportunity to do something about it. There's an opportunity for technology to change. And even if you missed, you know, the first boom of Wi-Fi, you know, Wi-Fi did the critical price, it did the critical mass, but it hasn't done displacement yet, and it hasn't done free yet. There's still more opportunity in that. I'd like to demonstrate what I mean by this by going through telling the story of the DVD, which is a technology which has done all of these. The DVD, as you know, was introduced in the mid-1990s, and it was quite expensive. But you can see that by 1998, it had fallen below $400, and $400 was a psychological threshold. And it started to take off. And you can see that the units started to trend up, hit an inflection point. It's taking off. The next thing it hit, a year later, was critical mass. In this case, 20% is often a good proxy for critical mass in a household. And what's interesting here is that something else took off along with it, home theater units. Suddenly you have DVD in the house, you've got high quality digital video, you have a reason to have a big screen television, you have a reason for Dolby 5.1 surround sound, and maybe you have a reason for starting to connect them and bring the rest of your entertainment in. What's interesting also is note that Netflix was founded in 1999, and Reed Hastings is here. He clearly saw that that was a moment, that was an inflection point that he could do something with. The next phase it hit was displacement. You can see around 2001, it finally outsold the VCR. And here too, you can see the implications in the world at large. Netflix was right. The Netflix model could capitalize on the DVD in a way that the video rental stores couldn't. Among the DVD's many assets was that it's very small. You can stick it in the mailer, post it cheaply. That gave an advantage. That was an implication of the technology's rise that wasn't obvious to everybody. And then finally, DVDs are approaching free. There's a company called Apex, a no-name Chinese firm who has, and several times in the past year, been the #1 DVD seller in America. Their average price for last year was $48. You're aware of the Walmart, well, perhaps apocryphal Walmart stampede over the $30 DVD. But that's but they're getting very, very cheap. And look at the interesting implication of it. As they get cheaper, the premium brands, the Sonys and such, are losing market share, and the no-names, the Apexes, are gaining them. They're being commodified, and that's what happens when things go to zero. It's a tough market out there.
He actually wrote a book called Free shortly after this. But this notion of commoditizing, the no-name Japanese maker of DVRs came into the market, and the big brand starts to lose. This is exactly what happens, and we're going to talk about this on Friday. This is called disruption. But I find the theory interesting. I find this description interesting, and these are the inflection points that I'm talking about. When something changes form and crosses some, goes through some collision. Critical price, if you see something drop, when it goes to specific price, something will happen. Some business model will emerge because it is possible to do that. Critical mass, when everybody's using it, it starts to play something out, and then it becomes free. And we've seen, I have one lecture just talking about free, because free, actually somebody pays for things. So technology, diffusion of innovation, go from technology to consumer, that's sort of the trend. So that brings me to what we call industrial design. If you look at the history of companies in the first half of last century, sort of before the wars and between the wars, great wars, there were a lot of emphasis on industrial design. Companies were making products that looked nice, and that was what they were trying to do. And then sort of after the war, sort of everything industrialized somehow, and design is becoming more important, because when technology gets mature, the design becomes very much important. Now, you all remember another one of these Apple things. These are the iPods that are sort of dying now, but the idea is not new. It's something that Kodak did many years ago, have multiple colors, have the cameras be pleasing to use. So it's not the first, Apple is not the first company to do this. So the problem is this: when you look at company structures, everybody in the company are technology persons, and they build the product. But then when the product matures, new talent is actually required. And this is what we've seen company fail, because they're just making technology products. And my company, we are a really good case study. We were all technology people. And if we had to if we had to save money, we would fire the sales guy, which was probably the last thing we should have done. So we were all technology. And when we were dealing with lotteries, that was our client, we were dealing with lotteries, the tech guys loved us because we were so tech. But the director, he didn't see point. Whoa, I don't know what these guys are talking about, Let's say like somebody else. So we became a victim of this also, but we survived. But the problem is that the organizational structure of companies need to change, and the change is very, very difficult. When the company moves from this technology to technology, from technology to sales. And this brings me to my favorite law. And I use this in my programming course, and I've seen this law in software development all the time. So organizations with design system are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structure of those organizations. This is very deep, but this is probably one of the most useful laws that you can find when you're building up companies. Now, if you have a director, if you have a person in one team working on one product that needs something from a person in another team, they're not in the same team, but they need to get, so person A needs to get something done from person B. Then they have to talk to their bosses and then or they can go directly. But the problem is that the person B has his own agenda for his team. So his concern is not that much of person A. If they were in the same team, they would work together. So you really need to design, for example, in software engineering, I always say, design the architecture of the system, and then you can create the organizational structure. It means that the communications paths are so powerful. If you need to talk to somebody across the hall, it's going to require bandwidth. And it means that I'm going to try to avoid talking to that person, so you get duplication of things and stuff like this. And this leads me to the designer. Now, who does the designer? So when you get designers into the company, they're sort of treated like a programmer, at least. They're just a person to design. They don't sit normally at the table where major decisions are taken, because they're just like a programmer. But that's the problem. They need to be involved in everything, in whole ecosystem, the whole experience. And this is why I got the second Apple example today, and this I take from a guy called Bill Buxton. He has talked about this. So this is Jonathan Ives. He's the designer of Apple, and let's agree that Apple makes great products and people love them. We saw that in the video earlier. So he's a genius. But the thing is, you heard the turnaround story when Steve Jobs came back to Apple. It's been, famous story. So Steve Jobs was kicked out somewhere in the 80s, and then he came back in 1997. But Johnny Ives got hired in 83. So he was there when everything was going down the toilet for them. He was there when they had all the other bosses and things. He was there when the company was going bankrupt. And then they did this turnaround. Steve Jobs came, and the story is that he called a meeting within 24 hours and said, we're going to focus on industrial design. Thank you, end of meeting. And he went and brought the design department and put them up at the table where the decisions are made. So the point here that I'm making is, if you want to make great products, design has to be first-class citizens of the company. It has to be something that is at the table where decisions are made. So the turnaround for Apple happened with the talent that was already there. The iMac, beautiful piece of computing. This was the first time people had computers in their living room. Because computers before that, they were like these white color, sort of beige, ugly, with noise. This looked beautiful, and you wanted to have it in your living room. So industrial design is important. And then we talked about this. I didn't finish talking about this. So the white earbud, they took this and created this great art when they saw, okay, people are talking about these earbuds. No, it wasn't the earbud that sold the iPod. It was the whole experience, everything about the ecosystem. Going into iTunes also, that was the thing that sold the iPod. And they did a brilliant capitalization on this thing. So it's technology, it's business, it's design, and the design is always kind of forgotten. So these are the computers you didn't want to have in your living room. So when it is early, there are different groups that buy your product, and then the value becomes good enough, other people will start to buy this. And when it gets good enough, value becomes more important. Design becomes more important. It's not technology, and they're looking for other things like convenience, productivity, ease of use, lots of other things, and emotions. So let's look at a few examples of beautiful design. This will track everything you do in life. And you plug this into the computer and it will track your sleep. Looks really nice. This is a computer. Sonos, this is a wireless speaker. Actually works pretty well. I have one at home. So I use my iPhone or tablet, whatever, if I want to listen to something. Then I just go into the Sonos apps, connect to Spotify, and it streams music. Perfect. So I have Spotify service, I have this wireless speaker, and I have my iPhone. Everything works together in a frictionless way. Beautifully designed. And if you have more than one, you can actually have them synchronize, so you get beautiful sound. TVs are getting so beautiful today, really flat. Cars, I should have put a Tesla there, it's more cool. Even the products, their packaging, people don't throw their damn packets away. They keep it. They keep it because they don't want to throw it away. It looks nice. It's crazy. And I have a laptop like this. It's really beautiful. And I like it. I forgot to put this up. I also have like the lighting system. All the lights in my house, except in the bathroom, I need to fix that. They're controlled by my smartphone. So last Halloween, I bought a Halloween theme. It was so scary, orange and red lights flashing through the apartment. And then some little kid came, and I had this nasty music on. And then some kids knocked on the door, asking for candy. And I had this really nasty experience for them. And so it was a pleasant experience for them because they're going to come next year, for sure. So my lighting system is controlled by, and we're getting to this point where this is becoming frictionless. Even websites. So the whole ecosystem here is, the website is beautiful. The user interface works.
This is a very ugly website.
Sorry?
The Spotify website? Yeah. Looks terrible.
Now, this is the move from technology to commodity. So you have the unfilled need here, and then it gets good enough, and this is the excess, and then the thing will shift. It will change. So I want to close with one video talking about importance of design.
I'm going to talk about a very fundamental change that is going on in the very fabric of the modern economy. And to talk about that, I'm going to go back to the beginning. Because in the beginning were commodities. Commodities are things that you grow in the ground, raise in the ground, or pull out of the ground, basically animal, mineral, vegetable. And then you extract them out of the ground and sell them on the open marketplace. Commodities were the basis of the agrarian economy that lasted for a millennium. Well, then along came the Industrial Revolution. And then goods became the predominant economic offering, where we used commodities as a raw material to be able to make or manufacture goods. So we moved from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy. But what then happened over the last 50 or 60 years is that goods have become commoditized. Commoditized, where they're treated like a commodity, where people don't care who makes them. They just care about three things and three things only: price, price, and price.
Now, there's an antidote to commoditization, and that is customization. My first book was called Mass Customization, and it came up a couple of times yesterday. And how I discovered this progression of economic value was realizing that customizing a good automatically turned into a service, because it was done just for a particular person, because it wasn't inventory, it was delivered on demand to that individual person. So we moved from an industrial economy to a service-based economy. But over the past 10 or 20 years, what's happened is that services are being commoditized as well. Long distance telephone service sold on price, price, price. Fast food restaurants with all their value pricing. And even the internet is commoditizing not just goods, but services as well. What that means is that it's time to move to a new level of economic value. Time to go beyond the goods and the services. And using the same heuristic, what happens when you customize a service? What happens when you design a service that is so appropriate for a particular person? That's exactly what they need at this moment in time. Then you can't help but make them go, wow. You can't help but turn it into a memorable event. You can't help but turn it into an experience. So we're shifting to an experience economy where experiences are becoming the predominant economic offering.
So experience, and we see this again and again and again, where you really have to experience things. So market of commodities. So what happens when the market matures? We get karaoke capitalism. There was a book that came out a few years ago, and everybody's copying everybody else. So if you're in one business, you go and look at the products that the competitor has and try to do exactly the same. Now, if you look at industries, for example, newspapers and car companies and whatever industry, if you go to their web pages, they're all the same within industries, because they're always looking at each other. They're not trying to do anything unique. So you don't care. I mean, many people, they don't care what wine bottle to select. They don't care which toothpaste. If their favorite is out, if they have a favorite, then they just buy the next one. So what people try to do is to create blue oceans, get away from these. And there was a book called Blue Oceans a few years back. And here are some of the examples of products that are used in the book. Yellowtail was a very popular wine coming from Australia. To me, this is not a wine. This is a sweet drink of some kind, but it's very popular because it was sweet. So they broke the rules of red wine. You know, I would never drink this. Napjet is another example. Cirque du Soleil, another example, where you look at value innovation. And this is the last slide. Instead of focusing on beating the competition, you focus on making the competition irrelevant by creating a leap in value for your buyers and your company, and thereby opening up new and uncontested market space. This is what everybody has to be doing. Break away from the commoditization. So, next time we're going to talk about disruptive technology and why companies fail. Okay?